I blame Shark Tank to an extent for this because it paints this picture of like anybody can do it, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna raise money and like we're gonna build something as quick as possible, as fast as possible, and raise money and then sell. But it's not creating something sustainable long term that is like with solid business fundamentals. And yeah, there's, to your point, there's outliers. You know, you have the Steve Jobs, you have the Alex Hormozis and others that is like hustle culture all the time, grind, grind, grind. That's not balanced. That's not healthy. And so I think there's a difference between being a business owner and being an entrepreneur. And very few people are wired to be an entrepreneur, of willing to take those risks and to like damn the torpedoes and burn the ships and just go all in all the time. But I think most people could probably be a business owner, whether that's a side hustle or something that they're passionate about or they could go into, if they're willing to stick with it long enough and, you know, focus on their core competencies and where they see a need in the market. And so I think differentiating between those two can be helpful.
Welcome to Builders, the podcast for impact-driven leaders who are done carrying it all and ready to scale with clarity, strategy, and freedom. I'm your host, Alex Snyder, strategic growth architect, creator of the CEO Recode, and second brain to leaders who are building brilliant companies without sacrificing every ounce of their time, energy, or sanity. Each episode, I sit down with bold leaders who've rebuilt, recalibrated, or redefined what it means to lead well and live well on their own terms. We talk messy pivots, leadership upgrades, tactical wins, and the deep personal work it takes to build a business that actually works for you. If you love the episode, make sure you follow, rate, and share it with another leader who's building big and wants to build smarter. And if you're listening and thinking, damn, I need someone in the guts of my business with me, let's talk. Book your free business breakdown call using the link in the show notes. In 30 minutes, I'll help you pinpoint where blockers in your time, team, or strategy are silently stalling your growth and define 2 to 3 high-impact shifts you can implement now to regain traction and build momentum. Now, let's dive in. Let's build it better. Welcome, Seth, to the Builders Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited for today.
Thanks for having me, Alex. I'm excited. This will be fun.
Amazing. I just have to say before we kick off, you have the coolest name ever, Seth Spears. You sound like a super villain.
Maybe that's my alter ego. Or in another career, another life, I could be a villain.
So many options. I mean, I feel like you've already lived so many lives because I want to describe you as first and foremost an adventure-loving outdoorsman and entrepreneur, and yet you're also, you know, an incredible connector, a prolific brand and business builder, a podcaster, a business strategist, an angel investor, I believe. Mm-hmm. I don't think I will do you justice, so I'm just going to ask you to introduce yourself in your own words.
Well, first of all, I've kind of come to the conclusion about myself is that I shouldn't listen to my own press releases. So at the end of the day, I'm an insanely curious individual who loves to explore and learn about people and business, and I love being in nature and the outdoors. I'm a father, I am a business owner and brand builder, and I've done a lot of different things over the years. But at the end of the day, I just love learning about others and seeing what they're up to and seeing how I can provide value in the world, whether that's in conversation or in business strategy or creating something cool or interesting and just enjoying life.
I love it. Well, I see you as a true kind of multi-potentialite, multi-hyphenate, you know, whatever you want to call it. You're passionate about so many different things, from the great outdoors to, you know, music, travel. I know that you really are a big proponent of conservation, sustainability, health. You've built so many incredible and unique, you know, brands and businesses and collaborations. And, you know, we were first connected. I had to like expand out the experience section of your LinkedIn just to see what you're currently up to.
Sure.
So I think our first call ran like 2 hours. There was so much to connect about. And with all of those unique roles, those unique businesses, how did each one kind of build on the other to get you where you are today?
My life has been very circuitous, you know. I consider myself kind of an accidental entrepreneur per se. I always had an interest in business ever since I was about 16. My parents got involved in like a direct sales. It was a multi-level marketing company in the health space. And they had been involved like in Amway way back in the day, which and so I was around like personal development, because like Amway, that's one of the things that they encourage is like reading and growing. And like I remember reading Tony Robbins, I think Awaken the Giant Within, or one of those books when I was like 13. How to Win Friends and Influence People, The Magic of Thinking Big, all of these different personal development books. I was surrounded by those as a kid, like on my parents' bookshelves. So funny backstory about me, I was actually homeschooled my entire life, from kindergarten all the way through high school. First time I ever took notes or sat in a classroom was my freshman year of college. So I was always a little different, but I hated school, but I was a voracious reader. Like I loved to learn, but only on my terms, and it was something that I was interested in. Mm-hmm. And so I would read everything, and a lot of personal development and self-help, just being on the bookshelf as a kid growing up. So when I was 16, my parents got involved in this company, and they sold like nutritional products and some personal development products and like water filters and air filters and a bunch of stuff like that. And so they had a whole marketing arm, and I was very curious about it and got interested. I'm like, oh, marketing, this is really interesting. You have a product, but in order to sell it, you've got to position it. You got to have the correct messaging and all of this. And so that was kind of my first interest in entrepreneurship or business or sales. And so I ended up going to college for marketing and always had ideas. I'm going to start a business. Thought I would get married, have kids, start a business, and sail off into the sunset, and that would be it. It didn't quite happen like that exactly. But out of college, I took a job at a university as the assistant director of admissions, and hated it. It was not fun. It was not very profitable, but I was always like looking at ideas. What could I do? What kind of business could I start? So I dabbled in a little bit of real estate investing, and this is like the mid 2000s, and I got in right before the market crashed, and then it tanked, and I got out with my shirt and didn't lose any money, but definitely didn't make thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars like I was expecting to. So that was kind of like my own personal first foray into like the entrepreneurship or business world. And so back to like being homeschooled. So I had experience. I knew that world. I understood what what it was like being homeschooled and what students needed to prepare for college, because I'd gone to school myself, and then I was working in the admissions department for a liberal arts college in Nashville, Tennessee. And so I saw this opportunity. I'm like, all of these kids preparing for college, they don't actually know what they need to do. They're homeschooled. I have experience doing that. What if I started like a consulting or like a program or something, helping homeschool students prepare for college? So I did that. That was kind of my first foray into the digital marketing space and kind of like coaching. And I got really deep into like reading about Frank Kern and Jeff Walker and Yannick Silver and Andy Jenkins and all of like these OG digital marketing experts. And really went deep on learning that. And so I started creating this thing called Homeschool College Counselor, and I ended up leaving the job that I had, went full-time doing that. Then I realized, okay, just because I see there's an opportunity here, if the target market, they don't realize that they need it or they don't want to pay for it, that it's not a very good business. So I did some consulting around all of that. I built a website for myself and had to learn it. And so, but as part of that, learning to build a website and like, okay, well, how do I get myself out there so people know what I'm doing? Well, then I've got to market it. And like, okay, social media is a good way to do that. And then SEO. And so I started like learning all of these different skills that are kind of the basics now. And just teaching myself the fundamentals of digital marketing, which was pretty fun and interesting. And then I also had several friends and family members who were starting a business or needed a website. And like, Seth, you just built this for yourself. Could you do that for me? I'm like, sure, why not? Let's give it a go and see. And I was just kind of still in this learning and building and growing mode. And so I did. And so I started like a boutique digital marketing agency called Spears Marketing. And we focused on WordPress-based web design and primarily working with local businesses, helping them to build out a solid web presence and SEO and social media. And that was kind of how I really got my start like in the digital marketing world.
Wow. You're really, truly an OG. I think we have some friends in common who also, got into that space 15, 16, 18 years ago. And it's part hard work, part timing, right? Becoming such a leader in the industry. I love that. So I'm always curious, you just talked about quite a long journey. I mean, literally from homeschooling to where you are today.
And that was only the beginning of it.
Yeah. I mean, let's jump back in.
Sure.
I feel you're going to cover what I'm going to ask about. So,
okay.
Inflection points and lessons
and
things. So let's get into it.
Yeah. So after starting the marketing firm, during that time, I was married and having kids. And then I convinced my now ex-wife to start a blog in the health and wellness space. So she was a journalism major in college who had gone back to school for nutrition. And so she was a really good researcher and was trying to figure out the best stuff to do for our family's health. And so it's like, hey, like self-publishing, this is a thing. Like I've always been a visionary and could see, and like a tech early adopter. And so I could see where things are going, where they're headed. Like this whole blogging thing, this is going to be huge. And there were some that were around, but none that were really in the health space yet. So I convinced her to start a blog, and then I started using that and she was researching and writing and stuff. And I used that as a testing ground for my paying clients to see what would work. And those tests worked really well, and it grew and grew into this, into like a massive company. And then I got really burnt out on client services. I had, a couple really bad clients that were just overly demanding and just like rude and treating like some of my teammates poorly. Then I had my full-time developer quit, and I was just really burnt out. And so this is around 2014, 2015, something like that. And so this other company that I had started with my ex-wife that had turned a hobby that had turned into a business, I'm like, I definitely hit an inflection point. I remember sitting in my office in Bowling Green, Kentucky, thinking about this. It's like, okay, I can continue to do what I'm doing, where I'm building a really good reputation and name for myself, and like I feel fulfilled doing it, and it's like what I'm somewhat passionate about, but it's also getting hard. The margins aren't nearly as good. Client services is challenging. Or I can pivot and still just do some consulting and still focus a little bit on it to keep my foot in the door of the space. And I can go all in on growing this other thing on the side, this health site, with my wife at the time. And while I think that's probably a better fit for my family, and there's more opportunity there because this is growing and growing, and like the whole health space, the natural health space is just really taking off. Like if I do that, but my ego is going to take a hit. And so because then she's the face of that, and I'm the back end tech and the marketing, but I'm the vision and all that stuff. And so I'm like, okay, you know what? Screw the ego. I'm burnt out over here. I can do this, and that's going to be best for our family at the time. So I did. And so went all in on growing that website, which was WellnessMama.com, and it became the largest health and wellness website and podcast for moms. And so that was like my primary focus for several years, until then I started a separate company from there called Wellness, which is my primary focus today. And that is a B Corp certified brand of all natural personal care products, primarily oral care. And that got its start because we had tutorials on how to make your own personal care products from home. And the audience really liked those, but got tired of making those products themselves. And so when you have an audience and they're telling you what they want to buy something or something that's better that's not already out there, like, hey, that's probably a decent business opportunity. And so that's where Wellness came from, and then launched that in 2020. And that's been my primary focus to today. And then I've got several other side things that I've done over the years, but that's kind of a little bit of the circuitous journey that it's taken from starting off in like consulting and digital marketing into the health space, and where we are today.
Thank you for sharing. Oh my goodness. I just want to highlight how much I love what you said about ego, because being a visionary is incredible, and taking that back seat, almost like you're the visionary, but someone is the face, and you probably had to handle some of the operator or integrator role, is a huge shift. And I kind of have a tagline I always say, which is like, drop the ego, maintain the audacity, right? Like you have to be audacious to make something out of nothing, to continuously believe that thing is possible, and like really drive. But it comes with self-awareness and humility and asking for support, and sometimes being in a different space. And so I'm just going to like take that moment, because I love the way you framed that, and look what happened. You ended up with the biggest, site, podcast, in this space, that is an incredible achievement.
Yeah.
And I also love that you said, what's best for my family.
Sure.
Because that's a lot. We're going to get into all that. Like,
Yeah.
About wealthy leadership, which is just my branded version of success on your terms, and how that changes over our journeys.
For sure.
And I'm so excited.
But you know what's really interesting about that inflection point and that decision is it is because of that, I believe, that my marriage ended and we ended up separating out and divorcing. Because when you work with a spouse, when you work with a significant other, it can be fun, it can be enjoyable, it can also be challenging, depending on how you're wired, what your attachment style is, the things like all the integration of life together. Because when you're working together, there can often be no separation. And so I truly think that by making that decision, that affected the polarity within the relationship and the status of it. Because her status elevated and mine went down from a public perception. And because she was the face. Before, I had been the face of the company of what I was doing. And I scaled that back in order to grow this thing together. But I truly believe the way men and women are wired, and just from an evolutionary biological perspective, men need to have higher status because that's what women look up to and they want that. And then if that's flipped, women, they tend to lose respect for who they're with. And so then that affects the polarity within the relationship, and it's very hard to maintain that. And so I truly think that it was because of that decision, while it was the best thing for my family in the short term, in the long term, that did affect the relationship and cause us to grow distant, grow apart, and separate out. And
that's so
now
interesting.
co-parents. Yeah.
I'm curious if you're open to talk about it more. Do you think that there are mitigations you can do to like keep that more at home while having work? Because
that's a great question.
Yeah, I think it is really hard to work with your partner, even without coming into polarity, which is a topic I'm fascinated about.
Sure.
I think, separating home and work and being able to switch off and be present, and I see this, I think in everyone, but it's something I see in women a lot, like flipping the switch from like running your company to being at home. And it's one that I've thought about, like, this version of me versus that version of me. And if I live in the work version of me all the time, I am exhausted. And it is very hard to connect.
It's a great question, and I don't know. I think I can't imagine how hard it is to be a woman today, just because there's the societal pressure to be like a significant other, a wife, a mother, a spouse, but also be a boss babe and doing all these things. And these are conflicting things, especially within the feminine psyche. It's because being soft and feminine and receptive, but then going out and being dominant and winning and all these things, which are more masculine traits. And so trying to balance those out, and like this pressure that is put on them culturally and societally, is very challenging. So I don't really have an answer for that. I think the only thing I can come up with is that you have to have clearly defined rules and really set those in place and have those boundaries. Because often, in my experience, is what women say they want versus what they actually want are two very different things. Which, from a man's perspective, that's very hard, because it's like, okay, I'm doing the thing that you said that you wanted, but then your response to me isn't like what I was expecting. It isn't good. So as an example, when I was running my marketing firm, I had an outside office. And then, so my ex-wife, she was like, oh, I wish you were home, here for the kids and all this stuff. And so then I would start working from home more. But then we would kind of like go at it. So it's like the words that are coming out, but then the receptivity is not the same. And so that is very hard for men to do, because, when you're raised by like a strong woman, like a mother who is trying to teach you to be a good person and all this stuff. So you want to be receptive to that, and you want to be a good man and do the things that you're told. And so we're told to be honest, to be ethical, to be moral, to do all of these things. And so to trust people and listen to the words that they're saying and go by that. So then when you hear these words and you're following and going along with what they're saying, but then the response isn't that, it's very confusing. You don't know what to do. And so what we're told, but what the reality is, are often very different things. And that's been a very, very hard lesson for me to learn over the past few years.
I can imagine. Thank you for sharing. I think because I've reflected on this quite a lot over the last few years, as I've,
done the personal development work. I mean, I think entrepreneurship and leadership are personal development journeys that none of us signed up for. You know, we're like, I don't remember, I don't remember applying to this course, but we're on it. Whether you like it or it's like waking up where you're like naked in front of the class, you know, and the dream. But I've also thought a lot about this because I think one of the biggest things I've looked at, and I saw this in my clients when they gave me feedback, the skills that make a good leader are a lot of the same skills that make you a good friend, partner, parent, right? Mm-hmm. And it is the ability to self-reflect, be self-aware, create, environments where other people can feel safe to do that. And it really comes down a lot to like communication and boundaries. But to your point, it's one thing to say something. It's another thing to do it. And you can say something, but if you don't really even understand what you really need, or like saying the example you gave, right? Like, oh, it'd be great if you were home more. Yeah, but home in work mode, right? Like I have friends who have that situation of working from home, and one of the partners is like, I wish you'd have an outside office because you're just here in work mode. You don't want to be disturbed. You're grumpy. Like I can't go about my day in the house without worrying about whether it's a problem for you, whether we're making too much noise. So it's such an interesting perspective. Whereas they're like, oh, I had an outside office and like, fuck that. Now I'm going to be at home all the time. Wonderful. And I'm like, do you guys talk to each other?
Yeah. I think that gets to the core of there are no solutions. There are only trade-offs. For every decision that you make, you think that we're going to do the thing that is the best, that's the solution to this problem or this challenge. But there's always a trade-off no matter what. And you may not even know what that trade-off is at first.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, that's actually something I always want to be asking about. So thinking about kind of your journey and what is really most important for you these days. Like I said, I love talking about wealthy leadership, and really it's just success on your terms, like actually being clear. You're not checking these boxes that like everybody thinks are important. Like what is most important to you? And today, personally and professionally, what does that look like? And has that changed from the past? How does it kind of maybe align to what you're focusing on in business today? Has it affected your choices?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I think when we're younger, it's all about the drive and the goal, and let's accomplish this, and whatever that objective is. Maybe it's a financial goal, maybe it's a sales goal, maybe it's a traffic goal. That's what I was driven by, the game of business, of how much traffic can we get? Like from an SEO perspective, like can I rank this article? Can I rank that episode? All these things just to see, and that was fun. That was the game. Then obviously you need your financial needs need to be covered, your bills and all that stuff in order to live a good, fun, healthy life. And so it's evolved a lot over the years. Today, it's kind of like, do I have the ability to travel? Do I have the ability to have a good life, to have everything is cared for as far as my bills and things like that, but spend time with friends, spend time with family, take care of my children, do these things that I enjoy that entails a good life, and not just like trying to accomplish everything, because again, there's always trade-offs. So I'm kind of at an inflection point right now as far as looking at what's next. What I want the next, I'm 46. And so it's kind of at that point of life where it's like, I've done a lot of things and life hasn't necessarily played out the way I expected it to, maybe even the way I wanted it to. But, you got to play the cards you're dealt. And so looking forward, okay, what's going to be next for me? Where do I want to go? Who do I want to spend time with? What's the next business venture that I'm going to get into? And so there's a lot of questions around all of that right now, and I have some ideas, but again, back to that, there's going to be trade-offs no matter what. And so I'm kind of looking at it, how can I have more balance in my life so that it's not just all work, or it's all play, or it's all this, or it's all that, but it's balancing those things out, and there can be a season and time for each of those, but just trying to make sure that I'm spending time with friends, having that social outlet, community, my physical health, my mental health, my emotional health, like all those aspects, because it's also important.
I love that you said the word balance, because I am always curious on people's take on this. What is your take on having it all?
When we look at balance, it's almost like it's kind of like you're trying to average things out, where it's like kind of like flat across the board, right? However, the average of something, it isn't where it's just like this level playing field. You get the average because you have your ups, you have your downs, you have your highs, you have your lows. And I think balance is similar. You can have it all, but not all at once. And so sometimes there's going to be areas of your life where you need to work more. Sometimes you need to focus on your health more. Sometimes family more. Sometimes just different areas. And so I think it's a moving target that we're always aiming at, but trying to balance out these different facets of life that are so important. And so I don't know that I have a great answer for it, as since it is a moving target. I think I'm always trying to like adjust and account for that. Yes, I really don't have a better answer than that.
You said. So, do you surf? Are you?
I do.
Like, have you surfed?
Yep.
Okay. I'm a sporadic enthusiast, just because I don't live
sporadic enthusiast. I love that term.
Where I can surf, but like that is one consideration for like whether I shift part time somewhere else, because I really love surfing, and surfing has phases, right? So like you have a big wading phase, then you have a like paddle. Like your life depends on it, because if you don't if you don't get the speed, you can't catch the wave, and then you get up and then you get off, right? But you can elongate the up phase, and sometimes you have to shift your weight back, and sometimes you have to shift your weight forward, and you're constantly like, I think of balance from a physical term, balancing board, surfing, skateboarding, like running. I mean, you could fall over running if you don't like find the right. I mean, I could fall over standing still. For someone who's so athletic, my like non-athlete time is incredibly clumsy. But that's often how I think of it. Or I also think of it kind of as like when I think about the pillars of life as like a soundboard. I'm like, if you want to be an elite athlete, which I was, then like you are an 11 on one thing and probably like a 2 on everything else.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not an elite athlete anymore. But what if I was like a 7 to 8 across the board? Sure. Like, what would that be? So anyways, I think the surfing analogy is one that helped me, because I agree with you. I don't think balance is average. Also, I don't love the word average, because I think we can think of mediocrity.
It's not linear.
But it's like equilibrium. It's like, how do you adjust and pivot intentionally to achieve your goal, which if we think surfing is like, how do I ride that wave for longer? Yeah.
It's kind of like, have you ever heard the quote that God paints straight with crooked lines?
Ooh, I have not.
So it's kind of, and I think an analogy that goes along with that is that like a pilot, when he's flying a plane, he's constantly doing micro corrections. Because if he doesn't, by the time you get to the destination, say it's 1,000 miles away, he'll be miles off if he doesn't correct. Because each little correction over time, it will veer so far off. And so I think that's part of it. It's just those little micro adjustments and micro corrections in order to get where you're trying to go. Whether that's in business, whether that's in a relationship, in all areas of life.
Yeah, no, I love that. You reminded me, I used a similar analogy years ago when I was earlier in this business of, when you are driving, there is no such thing as a straight road, right? Even a road that appears fairly straight, there are curves, there are adjustments. And so you are constantly making these micro adjustments that keep you smoothly on the road. And actually, if you hit the rumble strip, you do a bigger adjustment, which then usually requires a counter adjustment and becomes more dangerous, more extreme. And actually, it's the regular check-ins, which I talk a lot about. Your strategy is your guide rails for day-to-day decisions. And, having those in place, if you get all the way to like where you're questioning the vision, like you've gone off onto the gravel. You got to stop and like reassess. There's no like quick comeback because you're going to veer into the other lane.
That reminds me of a study that I saw recently about like guys who are more likely to make really like elaborate crazy decisions around life, whether that's gambling or doing something very risky. Typically, they're already at a point in life where they have nothing to lose. So they're going to be more risky because of that, because their life has already gone off kilter. And so you're willing to take a bigger risk that, great risk, great reward, but also it could go to the other extreme and totally sink everything financially or otherwise. And so I think that's back to it, as opposed to making like those micro adjustments and trying to change a little bit, like how to eat an elephant one bite at a time. making those little changes right here and there that will slowly get you back to equilibrium or where you're trying to go, as opposed to trying to like overcorrect, which, like, to the car analogy, if you overcorrect at times and it's like a slick road or something, that's when you're going to flip.
Yeah, absolutely. You go too far, like on the front of your board, you're gonna into the ocean, right?
Done that.
Yeah, oh yeah. You're into the washing machine. You're like, you think you're gonna drown for a minute, you know?
How do I get up? Which is up?
Yeah,
which is down?
Which is up? Oh, God.
Follow the bubbles.
Yeah. I love that. So I also heard you talk about like loving the game. And that's something that I think about. Some of the really like impressive people in my life, often people that I've seen make big leaps between things, like going from being, you know, a doctor to an entrepreneur or a, you know, whatever. And I've watched their growth. They've also like really stepped out of their comfort zone. And a common thread that I've picked up on is they've been able to see something as a game, particularly maybe something that was like really outside their comfort zone. And they were like, the way they've described it to me, I'm like, oh, you kind of like the game, the Matrix, whatever, like they see it. And I know I see certain things in life where I feel like I'm almost seeing the infrastructure of it, where I'm like, oh, I see the levers. And then it's like, do we pull the levers? And I'm wondering if you can elaborate on how important do you think falling in love with the game is for growth, building businesses, success in life?
I've never thought about that before. That's really interesting. I think growth only happens when we are at the edge of our comfort zone, when we're pushing through. I had a conversation with the professor at the university that I worked with years ago. He was like the head of like the biology department. And he mentioned to me that learning is supposed to be hard. Because if it's not, you're not out of your comfort zone. You're just, something is being taught to you that you already know or agree with. And so you're not actually learning, because it's like if you're in the gym working out, in order to build muscle, you're actually creating micro tears. And so it is in that tear, in that thing that is hard, that the growth actually happens. And it's the same with learning any new skill set. You're getting out of your comfort zone. It's hard. It's pushing through. It's breaking through that barrier in order to get to the next thing for growth to happen. And I think that's where so many entrepreneurs, that they're afraid of that. Oh, this is too hard. Oh, I'm not going to push through. I'm not willing to. Because we're not wired for that. Like things that are hard or that are like getting us out of our comfort zone, that's scary. We could die. I mean, going back to our very reptilian brain, it's like if you could get kicked out of the tribe, or you could get eaten by a tiger or whatever. So we're a lot safer than we think we are. Even we're wired to think that life is not safe, even though
we haven't evolved for our current environment, right?
Exactly.
I don't understand that like someone being mean to me online isn't a tiger that's going to eat me or like whatever, you know?
Yeah.
But
And will we?
I thought about that identity, evolutionary regression to the norm is evolutionarily coded into us. And so, yeah, I talk about that all the time. So I love that you brought that up. I make fitness analogies all the time.
Nice.
Yeah. I actually read, and this is so funny. Do you know, I mean, I feel like life throws you things in the most interesting times. I read The Comfort Crisis. I shouldn't say I read. I listened to The Comfort Crisis. On my way to Burning Man 2023. For any burners out there, you will remember that was the mud year. Where the
best year ever. What camp were you at?
I was in Disorient.
Okay. I was at Camp Sandwich.
Oh, okay. So I listened to The Comfort Crisis, which anyone out there, fully recommend. Really interesting book. Love anything that's told through a story, but then with like research and interviews woven in. And I then, through circumstance of certain people in my camp, they like in our actual RV really needed to go. I was planning to stay, but my friend was like, could you go and take care of, they were first burners, they were, you know, and he was like, go with them. And I'm a fairly physically active, fit person. I've done a lot of work. I'm pretty mentally stable. Hiking for hours in the dark through
in the mud
that sucks your boots off, while I had turned all of our roller suitcases with like, you know, those marathon blankets, like those like shiny marathon blankets.
Oh yeah.
And duct tape. I had turned all of our roller suitcases into backpacks. So we were carrying suitcases on our back, look like we're in fucking space in our like whatever. I still have like pink braids and fishnets on.
Oh my gosh.
And then I have my like what looks like army backpack on the front, like military. So I just, it was a vision. And we're hiking through the mud in the dark. And I'm also been at Burning Man for a week. Like I'm physically depleted, you know? And we're hiking through, and I remember the book just starting to like play in my mind. And I was like, what are the odds that I just read this book? Wow. That I just read this book about how important it is and how fundamentally shaping it is to do hard things. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, the next 3 to 6 months, I had so much growth. I had so many things that I genuinely think largely came from me like just persevering through this difficult situation. And I say I'm a type 2 fun girly. Like I love a party, don't get me wrong. I enjoy nice things. But those things that are the stories, those things that in the moment you're like, fuck my life. Like, I am so uncomfortable. This is so inconvenient. Those moments, and I'm so grateful, I think that at this point, I know even in the moment that I'm like, no, this is gonna be something, you know?
We're gonna be telling stories about it.
Yeah.
Do it for the story.
Doing something years later, I'm still gonna be talking about it. But I really do fundamentally think that the ability to get outside of your comfort zone, the learning, and even I'm a neurobiology nerd, neural synapses that we form through the grind, through the graft. Now, my brand is that you shouldn't be grinding forever, and you should build a business that gives you the life you want and allows you to be healthy and happy and connected. But there will be moments of grind, there will be moments of hustle, and there will absolutely be moments of discomfort. And even for 2 days ago, maybe not even, I had a moment of like, I'm not sure this thing is working. I don't know. Maybe I just won't do it. And I was like, Alex, what? And thankfully, I have conversations with myself on the radio, sometimes out loud. And guess what? Last night, all kinds of stuff started rolling in. And I was like, imagine if you had hit the cancel button. Like, imagine.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. You know what's coming up for me around that is two things. First one is the book, The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. Great book. He wrote The Untethered Soul. I read The Surrender Experiment during a very challenging part of life when I was going through divorce and stuff, and just surrendering to the universe of what is, and not just what you think it is, and just accepting that. And it's kind of the same as far as like the comfort crisis of, you know, we're made to do hard things, and it's only when those hard things come up we have to push through to get through, and then that is where the growth happens, like we were talking about before. And I forgot the second point that I was going to make there.
Well, I love that I love the title. Like, surrender is, you could take it in so many ways, right? Like, I could have surrendered to those feelings of discomfort and like, oh, I don't know if this is working, and do I really want to like put all this effort in if like no one's gonna, you know, sign up, but like, or it could surrender to the big vision. Yeah. And this is like one little block that is leading to this huge thing that I want to do with my life and my legacy and the impact that I want to have in the world. Surrender could be interpreted in so many ways. Yeah. And I think it's like understanding those nuances and the intentionality with which you have to assess your feelings.
Yeah. I remember the point that I was going to make. My formula for success has always been do the right things long enough consistently. Yes. But that also begs a lot of questions. What are the right things? How long is long enough? And what is consistency? Because there's a time as an entrepreneur when you're building something, when do you push through? And when do you say enough is enough? Don't throw good money after bad. And when do you stop? And so that gets back into the long enough part, do the right things long and consistently. So, but how long is long enough? Because most people, they probably quit right on the verge, if they would have just pushed through a little bit longer. But then some people, if you continue chasing the wrong things or doing the things where this business isn't actually viable, when do you pivot? When do you not? I've got a friend, really close friend. I call him entrepreneur adjacent. He's got a good business mind. and like wants to be an entrepreneur, and he'll try a bunch of little things, but he doesn't have the stick-to-itiveness to push through long enough to actually see any of those things succeed. And so it's only if you like push through, stick it out, do it long enough to actually make it to see if it's viable or not, as opposed to just jumping to the next thing, like whatever the shiny object is. Because I think there has to be an element of consistency that you need in order to be successful, in no matter what. And where that balance is, I don't know. Maybe you have an idea.
Well, no, I was just, again, like, I was just reading my mind. I was writing a post called Know When to Hold 'Em, Know When to Fold 'Em.
Yes.
Because you have to understand the commitment required, right? You see those leaders, those entrepreneurs, usually I would say entrepreneurs more than leaders, who, shift every 2 months. And so they never gain traction, right? And the amount of time it takes to come up with a plan, you have to be ready to stick to that plan. You have to kind of like fuck your feelings and like follow the plan to its outcome. And to our point that we've made, there's those adjustments you're going to make along the way, but you have to invest and, do enough work to have enough data to analyze what works, what doesn't, make some adjustments, and usually try again and try again. But at the same time, to your point, sunk cost fallacy is real. And you can throw good money after bad and, waste your and other people's time and resources on something that fundamentally isn't showing any true indicators of traction and success. And I think this is what really seasoned entrepreneurs and investors are often best at, is understanding at what point do you go which way and how to suss that out.
Mm-hmm. Because that's, in my opinion, that's not the fun part. That's the part that I don't enjoy, but others do. But like in EOS terms, like you have the visionary and the integrator. And I feel like the integrator, they're much better with the numbers and the metrics and things like that, looking at it, as opposed to the visionary, like they're the cheerleader, like I've got this idea, this is the vision, this is what it could become. And sometimes it's not looking at the reality of it, because you're just seeing, it might, through like kind of like rose-colored glasses, maybe a Pollyanna complex a little bit. That might be doing it a little bit disservice, but
visionary. You have to be, and you have to respect your integrator and have good communication and boundaries. But like I score high on visionary, but I am off the charts on integrator. And so that is the role in pretty much every business partnership, every company that I have ever played. Yeah. And it is, one of my business partners, when he asked me, he was just like, I need the bad cop. I need this. And like, it's not fun to always be the bad cop. Honestly, it's not. But this is where you have to have that good relationship, because you have to have that person who is just like, oh, hey, like I came up with this and I already sold it and we got to deliver it. I'm going to murder you.
Now we got to figure out how to do it, but okay. Yeah. Because you need both of those, It's like you got to have the optimist, you got to have the pessimist, and somewhere between both of them, then it becomes the realist, right? And
I like to think I think if you're a good integrator, a good operator, you're like a pragmatic optimist, because you have to be like, we can do it, but these are the limitations. And so I always would be like, love that. Which one are we doing first? Because we sure as hell are not doing all of those things in the next 3 to 6 months or even this year. So, that's just the fundamentals of like strategic planning and prioritization. Totally. But even with the big ideas, success comes from consistency, but also focus, right? Like commit to less, get more done. Break it down, do the thing, then do the next thing with the resources that come out of that first successful priority. And I could go on for days. This is what I do. But I think you have to have that visionary audacity that we talked about it, right? Like you got to drop the ego, even as a visionary, to know that you have to listen to your integrator that you chose sometimes, but you have to be a little crazy. Like when I was an athlete, we used to say like Olympians, elite athletes, like they're fucked up. Like you don't get there being an average, normal, sensible person. Like,
tunnel vision.
Yeah. I was not. I barely had any friends growing up. I was a weirdo, and thank God I was so dedicated into like where I was going that I was like, it's not like it felt good to not fit in and be weird and like, you know, kids are mean, but even with like whatever self-worth stuff, I was not willing to change to fit in. And I'm so grateful and fairly certain that sports was one of the main reasons that I just wasn't that influenceable. Like I was just,
it's amazing.
I was like, yeah, great, sucks. Okay, would I like to have friends? And like, yeah, of course. Like again, evolution. But I was weird and intense, and I still am. It's just as an adult, you find other weird, intense people because especially with travel and the internet, like the world is bigger. I can only imagine, you know, 100 years ago, stuck in one town, I would probably still be a 40-something-year-old weird, intense person that like no one really likes. And like, okay, I don't know what that would mean for me, but today, thankfully, you know, the world is bigger, and you just find your way through. And you know, you also, I went through a big phase of learning to navigate social norms. And to your point about women, honestly, it came with a lot of like feminization. It came with a lot of stuff. I was like a tomboy. I didn't, you know, I was sports. I was this. I had like a buzz cut. Being more feminine as I got older and learning to navigate social norms, it was almost like going through and having all of these certain intuitions, which was really weird. And we're going like super off track here, but I suddenly developed like a radar for safety that I didn't understand. So I was just like, why do I feel really weird and anxious in certain situations? I found some people pleasing, like all kinds of stuff. And I was really, you know, I will throw back to what you said. I was in this hyper independence just because of how I was raised. And whether I never, you know, I was always there for other people, but I never let anybody in, never let any. And I went through this weird thing where I was like learning to navigate social norms, and it made me extremely good when you couple that with like sports leadership at consulting and all these things, completely unaware that I was good at it. I'm still thinking, I'm like, no, I'm a numbers nerd and I like not a people person. And, you know, it took somebody, as it often does, an external reflection from a partner in my firm who was like, what? Like, no. You are one, like a best leader we have and our teams follow you to the end of the world. Why do you think we send you to replace other directors? Like, and clients will only sign on with you. But learning to kind of navigate those social norms, I think there's always like pendulum swings when you change, and it kind of went like far to one way, and I had to come back to a more center, which I feel like I've really found now. And I think a lot of people, it's that like 30 to 40. I always joke that I feel like I went through like a factory reset, like restored to default settings where I am very clear on my weird and wonderful self, and the people around me are weird and wonderful. Like, I love people who are weird smart because it just lets me be super weird.
I mean, that's great. You know, what's coming up for me around this entire conversation is that historically, one of the reasons why there are more entrepreneurs and people that aren't afraid to get out of their comfort zone and do things differently in the US and Canada is because epigenetically, those traits have been passed down. Because all those people that immigrated and came over to the new world, they were the ones that weren't afraid. They were the risk takers. Those are the ones that say, damn the torpedoes, burn the ships, we're going over there, we're gonna see what's there. Because people thought the world was flat. You're gonna fall off into the abyss of whatever it is. And so those that were unwilling to just accept the status quo and get out of their comfort zone and just go and see, they're the ones that made it over. They're the ones that procreated and propagated the species to continue on. And so I firmly believe that's the reason why in the new world, we're so much more go-getter, entrepreneur, creative, etc. And probably also have a lot more anxiety and everything else as well. Because of that, again, always trade-offs. It's like, you know, because I'm Italian. And so every time I go back to Italy and stuff, it's just so comforting to see, it's just, this is the way it always has been. This is what we do. And things are slower. I love it, and it drives me nuts because it's like, okay, well, I want things on time and here, and let's do this and be productive, and there's too much bureaucracy and red tape. There's trade-offs. Can you have both? I don't know. And so that's what I struggle with all the time. It's because we want things to be slow and easy and fun, but we also want to accomplish and have goals and see our dreams fulfilled and all this. because the future is created by the dreamers. It's created by the doers, those that have the creativity, and those will not settle for the status quo and have a vision for something else. I mean, Steve Jobs, amazing visionary, created something amazing with Apple. Absolutely crazy though. I mean, not a good person to work for. I can't even imagine being around him, like absolutely nuts. But because he was so focused on what he was trying to accomplish and would not take no for an answer, built the largest company in the world and created some of the devices that we use every single day that changed history.
Yeah.
So I think back to your point, as far as being really focused, like as an athlete or as a business owner or anything, you have to have that tunnel vision sometimes and know when to push through and not accept what the pessimists or the realists are saying and say, no, I have the vision for this. This is what we're doing. This is where we're going. And you're either with me or you're out. But I need people that are actually going to figure out how to do it and not just tell me, oh, we can't do it because it's never been done before. Because if we just listened to that, we'd still think that the world was flat. We wouldn't have a telephone. We wouldn't have a car. You know, if we just listen to what people say that they want, we'd have a faster horse, not an entirely new way to transport us from here to there.
Yes. First of all, I did not think epigenetics was going to come up. I love it. The number of angles that we're taking in this conversation have me absolutely lit up. And I actually talk about this quite often. I want to get your take on this. So you just talked about Steve Jobs. We could highlight a bunch of other, what I would say, Forbes cover entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. They are extreme. They are extreme visionaries, extreme entrepreneurs. I would call them the outliers in the sense that they are so wild in their ideas and therefore creating something so incredibly unique that people are willing to put up with their extreme personalities to be part of the vision. But if you look at entrepreneurship overall, I would say the, core standard deviation of entrepreneurs have found a way to be innovative and unique and visionaries while having at least a baseline level of interpersonal skills and be able to really inspire, empower, enable, step out of their own bullshit to get people to deliver for them. And so I always talk about this because I caution people, don't get fooled by what you see on the magazine. Those are extreme outliers and they are unique and incredible in their own way. But majority of successful entrepreneurs have found some kind of balance, right? The Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, people are willing to put up with their shit, and they also get to a point where they put people in place to manage the fallout of that for them.
Sure.
What's your take on that? I'm open to being wrong.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. I think the term entrepreneurship and entrepreneur has really become bastardized, and I blame Shark Tank to an extent for this.
Oh, all right, let's go for Shark Tank.
Yeah, because it paints this picture of anybody can do it, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna raise money and we're gonna build something as quick as possible, as fast as possible, and raise money and then sell. But it's not creating something sustainable long term that is with solid business fundamentals. And there's, to your point, there's outliers. You have the Steve Jobs, you have the Alex Hormozis and others that is hustle culture all the time, grind. That's not balanced. That's not healthy. And so I think there's a difference between being a business owner and being an entrepreneur. And very few people are wired to be an entrepreneur, of willing to take those risks and to damn the torpedoes and burn the ships and just go all in all the time. But I think most people could probably be a business owner, whether that's a side hustle or something that they're passionate about or they could go into, if they're willing to stick with it long enough and focus on their core competencies and where they see a need in the market. And so I think differentiating between those two can be helpful. But realizing a lot of us are not wired to not just have a 9-to-5 or do the day-to-day. We're sold this vision that anybody can do it. And while yes, anybody can, how many people will? Very few. It's how many, could anyone be an Olympic athlete? Yes. Will they? No. And sometimes just because you can doesn't mean you should. And because you're gonna be happier, healthier, and have a more fulfilling life if you just stick with those things that you're good at. Because we still need 9-to-5 workers. We still need day laborers. We still need people that are doing things to make the world happen, and not just having a vision for something that's world changing or life changing. Because while we think that may be the case, or we're going to do that, it doesn't happen that often. And I've come to terms with that within myself as well, just realizing I'm not trying to change the world like in what I'm creating or something. Yeah, these oral care products are the healthiest on the market, and it's going to improve people's lives and less cavities and all of this stuff, and that's great. But is that really like world changing? At the end of the day, I mean, probably not. I'm not trying to get us to space or anything like that. I have no desire to, where, you know, like others are, like Elon Musk or whatever. And that's great, but they're also a lot crazier than me, I guess. And yeah, I don't know. I kind of see it kind of through that lens, I guess.
I love that lens, but I'm curious, like, I hope you're not categorizing yourself out of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I'm not. I kind of see it as like the term gets thrown around so much, and it's like every coach tries to say, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. No, you're not. You're a coach who's trying to coach another coach on how to be a coach. And it's like, it's created this entire industry that really it's not creating that much value at all. You're not actually creating a product that's making a difference or changing something. Yeah. To me, an entrepreneur is you're creating something that's bigger than yourself. And so you're building a team. You're creating a product or a service with a team under you, so it's not reliant upon you. Where otherwise you're just a sole proprietor who you've created another job where the boss is a crazy person.
I love that, and I do very much agree with you. I think, love the internet, love the fact that we're, exposed to more options, more ideas, that entrepreneurship is talked about more, love it. And don't love that it's sold to everyone as the solution for everything, because it is so much less lonely and less sexy. More lonely, less sexy than it's sold online. And I don't think it's for everyone. And I absolutely do not want to gatekeep. It's not about that. It's about you, to your point earlier, right? No one to hold them, no one to fold them. If you are sold entrepreneurship and it is not a fit for you, you could spend years of your life and your life savings trying to do this thing that is just not suited to you. And I think understanding as well, this is something I've really seen for years and reflected on, like, people get their fulfillment from different places, right? And I remember I went from a boutique firm to being acquired by a large firm, and then I moved offices, and I was, there's a reason I got promoted so quickly, right? Like, I grind and I hustle and I'm passionate, and I would see people who were in a much more 9-to-5 once I was in the larger organization, which was really weird for me, because one of the reasons I loved consulting so much was I was like suddenly surrounded by like very intelligent, but people who had figured out enough like emotional like intelligence and social norms to like function their intelligence into something, and who were really dedicated and really passionate. It was, think back to your school projects, right? Like, there's always the person who doesn't do their shit. Like, that doesn't exist in consulting, really. Like, that's like that, you don't pass the culture fit and get through the interview as that person. And if you manage to sneak through, like, you don't last for long. We have a nice exit conversation. And I remember just being like, one, I'm being paid to learn and problem solve, and I'm being paid a lot, which was like a whole other story of me getting comfortable with not being, overextended financially or struggling. But it was also like amazing and energizing to be there. And so fast forward to me having this reflection, and it was a reflection that wasn't in a bad place. It was someone in our organization was doing like a really cool not-profit thing, and the company was supporting that, and they were doing that thing. And I thought, like, wow, it's so interesting. It's like that is their passion, and then the job enables that, right? And I was like, oh, that's so cool. And then fast forward a few years later, where I've like left that, become nomadic, and now I'm doing a startup where I'm working just as hard, overextending myself, arguably burning myself out and sacrificing a lot of stuff for even less money and less security, in the short term. And I come to the realization that I am somebody who, like, I can't really separate what I spend my working time on from who I am and what drives me. Like, that is a personality element. It probably comes from being an athlete, where like I poured everything, and everything was in service to that. And like, impact is what gets me out of bed way more than money. I really, and it might not, I do want to change the world in some ways, and mostly by supporting other people who are going to do it and helping them get there when they might not have that. But I also in smaller ways. Like my clients, if their business gets there, their team is supported in different ways, has a better experience, has better stability in jobs, they get healthier, their family life gets better because this, what we talked about, the tools that make you a good leader make you a better human. And so I think that maybe is one of the elements. And you could argue, I don't love the word coach for me, but like I am a sole proprietor. I do have a team.
Sure.
But we're building towards a legacy and a bigger thing. But I have done the startup. I have built the company. I have sold the company. I have done the things. And I wonder if that, when you said that those thoughts all spiraled through my brain, if that's one of the things of like not really being able to separate that, and you can find balance. And that's a big part of my belief in my brand is like, you don't have to sacrifice it all. But I wonder whether it's that like just inability to like, I don't know what the word is, but like to clock out, to have a 9 to 5, to not be absolutely driven by what you're doing.
I think those people who are the most successful are willing to do what those who are less successful aren't willing to do. Mm-hmm. It really is, you're willing to make sacrifices, make those trade-offs, whether that's with your time, whether that's money, whether that's relationships, etc. But you have a vision for what you want to accomplish, and you're willing to sacrifice pretty much everything for that. And it would be a lot easier just to be content with what you have, like right now. Just get a job, you clock in at 8 or 9 or whatever, clock out at 4 or 5, and you go home and you have a beer with your buddies, and that's it. Like I think about that all the time. Is there something that seems amazing, and yet I don't know that I could do that, or I'm not wired like that. And maybe if it was a job that I really loved, and I was surrounded by people whose company and time I enjoyed spending with, like in that environment, that would be great. And some people that works for them, but others it just doesn't, because we're all wired so differently. And I think being okay with that and accepting where you are, that's fine. That's totally okay. But just in realizing if that's not how you're wired, then doing something differently, then going for it. Yeah. But I think that's important, and just being okay with where you are and learning from it and going from there.
Well, and what you're talking about, I think kind of naturally comes with a lot of highs and lows. And so I'm wondering, what do you think, like how does failure factor in? There's always going to be lows along the way, but what we're talking about, it comes with more extremes. Yeah.
You won't appreciate the highs unless you have the lows. And I think it's that differential, that dichotomy, and that goes back into like the balance conversation. And seasons. So like I grew up in Kentucky, so kind of like in the southern Midwest region of the US. And so we had 4 real seasons. I now currently live in Florida, which I don't love. And one of the reasons is because there aren't real seasons. We don't really get winter. Although last year we got snow, which was first time I'd never even seen flurries down here. So that was pretty crazy. Yeah, exactly. They called it the snowpocalypse because there's like 8 inches of snow. It was nuts. I'm sitting in my barrel sauna outside of my house with 8 inches of snow on the ground. I'm like, what's happened? What's going on? This isn't the world that I'm used to. But I love having those seasons and those changes, because like in summer it's hot, and then fall, which is my favorite time of year, when it starts to get a little cooler and the leaves are changing colors and the bugs are dying. And then summer or winter when it's snowing and it's cold and kind of you're changing how you're acting, like what you're wearing. And then spring when everything is blooming and fresh and getting warm. And I think that's a good analogy for life. It's like there's a time and a place for everything. And it's like that old song from the 60s, through everything, turn, turn, turn. Yeah. There's a season, turn, turn. That I can't remember who that's by, but
you're calling.
Yeah. So, but that kind of gets back to it, is like just accepting like that seasonality of life, and because you're going to have those highs, you're going to have those lows, you're going to have those in betweens. But at the end, I think they all balance each other out. But I think have you read the book Existential Kink?
I think so. Okay. I know the book, and now I'm like, did I read it?
It's basically about like the shadow, and about how some of those things that we tend to go back to over and over, that we say that we hate or we don't like, there's a little bit of an internal turn on around it, because like that's our shadow side, where we actually enjoy like the pain or the hurt of something. And maybe that's a story we told ourselves, or just coming from childhood trauma or wounding or something. And so we lean into that probably more than we should. And it's only in realizing it and working through it that you can get past it and kind of level things out a bit more. So that makes me think of that aspect too.
I love that. And I love that you talked about the seasons. I think, again, that's an intentionality thing as well, of like, you know, I'm going to push on this area, and I'm going to understand that these are going to come down, but like not below a baseline that I'm intentional about. Or, you know, when we exited the business that we sold in 2021, and then I went from, you know, pivoting a company in COVID, growing 3Xing while running a transaction, to then being a vice president in a much larger organization. I started this business, and at the time I was like, intentionally, this is not a scalable business. Yeah. Like, I do not want to be managing a ton of people. I don't want my people triple booking my calendar. Like, I don't want that. And I was like, and I know how I would, you know, adjust it, and I have whatever, but it was very much in that space of like, no, I have these other things, and I'm like, you know, I've built those up, thankfully, through that last phase, kind of post-exit. I like recalibrated, and a lot of learnings and beliefs and how I work flow into how I help other leaders now, because I did it while being crazy busy and doing all the things. But I was like, no, this is that. I made a lot of changes. I also stopped being nomadic. Like, I really kind of simplified my life. And then now, lo and behold, a few years later, I'm like, oh, I'm getting that itch. I'm like, oh, maybe. And now I'm like structuring out a new like way of working, offering. I'm launching a joint venture. I'm starting to think. Somebody said something about, oh, you're going to build a whole firm, whatever. And I was like, well, I wasn't thinking about it, but if I did, this is how I would do it. Okay, you know. But I think back then there was a part of me that was like, yeah, logically I know how I would change that because I'm a strategist and I got to be prepared. But I think, but felt like I'm never going to want to do that again, you know? But I think, you know, intellectually kind of knew that wasn't true, but like in the peepees, you're like, sure. I'm just like, fuck that. Like, thank God I'm past it. Thank God I survived. Great story, type 2 fun, phenomenal. Yeah.
I think that you can have a hangover from a certain aspect, and then it takes time to get past that, and then you forget about the pain of it. You're willing to go back into it again. It's kind of like a woman who has a child. Childbirth is the most painful thing imaginable, right? And so then, like, after, you're like, I'm never doing this again. No kids, never.
Not all and only then, children, so clearly.
Exactly. And then over time, it's like, oh, it wasn't so bad. It's like we look at the past, like at history, through rose-colored glasses and think that it was better than it was. Mm-hmm. And often we'll think like about the future as like, oh, this is going to be so much worse than it actually is. There's like these highs and lows expectations moving forward, and then historically looking back at it. It's kind of like when someone dies, then they're painted as like this saint, even though they might have been a terrible, awful person, but we kind of tend to look at them as better than they were. And I think it's just a thing with human nature. It's just how we're wired to do so.
I think there's also the learning too, right? Like, I am very clear on how I would do things now, what I learned. I know myself as a leader, a business partner, a person better. You know, I know myself, and like anything of this quantum would be, again, me with a visionary, right? Yeah. Like, maybe I'd be the visionary one day, like, but it would definitely be in a partnership. Like, I know myself, and I'm in this business, yes, but in anything that is the quantum of like a true startup, you know, or even like a larger business that's maybe more product focused, like it would be with somebody else. I know that, and I very much know like so much more about how to navigate that, and I think my baseline foundations are clearer. Like, even earlier this year, I like edged towards a little bit of burnout. I was overextending myself, you know. I went from overgiving in a personal space to then overgiving in a business space that started as a favor for a friend, but I saw the signs a million times earlier. I took corrective action faster, right? And I tell my clients this. I believe in this so much. It's part of my tattoo, the spiral of life, right?
Oh, cool, yeah.
everything goes around, but if you look at it from the wrong angle, like from the top, it looks like you're just going in a fucking circle and you feel frustrated. And you're like, why am I facing this team problem again? Why am I facing this problem? How are we up again? Why is our sale? No, you come back around. But if you look at it from the side, you realize you're going up the spiral, right? And you're going, and you're facing something in the same category, but you see it sooner. You have more knowledge, you have more resources. And if you can realize that you need to have that perspective to see it from the side, then you can pull on those resources. You can resolve it faster. You can move in different ways.
Yeah.
If you don't, you'll probably get stuck thinking, why the fuck am I facing this again? I dealt with this already. I don't, and just get stuck.
Yeah. And I think that's important. Anytime you can change something so that you can get a unique perspective on either the past or the future or what you're doing in general. Because I think it's really easy just to follow into the same patterns, the same traps of doing the same thing over and over, as opposed to having some type of pattern interrupt where you go in a different direction and then look back at something or the future. And it gives you a new perspective. So you can say, hey, I would do this differently, or I would do this the same. This is what worked, this is what didn't. And then really have a much better and objective perspective on it.
Yeah, because we are creatures of habit, and like we love to repeat. But I'm curious, speaking of, the objectivity and the perspective, what is something looking back, to Seth, who was early entrepreneur, starting businesses, or scaling maybe your first or second business, what do you wish you'd known? What would you say to that version of you?
Oh, yeah, this is a really great question. I would have valued myself more. I would have valued my time more, and I grew up in a family where hard work and productivity was what was seen as the most valuable thing. Italian, German, very rigorous, do this, do that. If you have time to lean, you have time to clean. So because of that, I thought that my value was in doing the work and of constantly just working all the time, being productive, never having downtime, not playing, but then also kind of having a scarcity mentality as opposed to actually realizing my own value and what I bring to the table. I know early on in my consulting days, I didn't charge enough. When I was building out sites, I was trying to be the best value as opposed for the client. And while that's great, but then often they wouldn't value it because I wasn't valuing myself. And that was just my own having imposter syndrome, or thinking that someone else had more value than me, or another company or whatever. And so I think it would be just really leaning into myself more and seeing what I was bringing to the table, and putting myself in that place so that I would charge what I was worth, that I would change the words that I was saying and how I was positioning. So I think I would be in a different place than I am today and further along in my career if I would have done that.
I love that answer. I think that's profound but very relatable.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm curious, it makes me think about the tables that we are at and the rooms that we enter as well. And you and I are connected to a lot of the same people. It's kind of surprising we haven't crossed paths earlier. We were introduced by an incredible mutual friend. You're in a lot of entrepreneur and business collectives like Baby Bathwater. What role do you think, peers and community play in the entrepreneurial journey?
I think it's imperative. I think you need to have that because it really is lonely when you're creating something on your own, kind of like we talked about before. When you're the outlier, when you're always pushing through and don't have that normal schedule like everyone else does or something, you need people that you can rely on or just bounce ideas off of. We're social creatures. We're built for community. And so without that, it's really lonely. And again, I think there's a time and a place for everything. Sometimes you need that time where you're just in work mode, or you're just going all in and don't have time for those things because you're so focused. And I can definitely do that. When I was a kid, and we talked about earlier, I was a voracious reader, and I would just go down a rabbit hole of something that I was interested in. And my mom would call me for dinner, and I'd be like, okay, in a minute. And I would just no, I'm in focus, I'm reading, I'm learning. Or when I started my agency and I was building out a project for a client or something, and I would not stop to eat, to go to the bathroom, to anything. I was just so tunnel vision focused. And I think at times we need that, and that ability to focus and do those things is important. But then the flip side, you do need time to recharge, to come back and have time with friends, with family, with community. And I know for me personally, when I'm just in work mode all the time, or just like working from home or whatever, without having that social outlet, like I am a much worse person. Like I get depressed. I get just like, I need to be around people. I need, even if it's just working from a coffee shop or something, just to have that social interaction, because we need to see others and not just digitally, you know.
It's like really an energy exchange, because the working in a coffee shop for me is great. Like hubbub around me that doesn't involve me,
yes,
for certain types of work is my jam.
Yeah.
And if I stay home alone working too long, I become like a little gremlin. I'm just like, it's very bizarre. It's not great. It's not cute. I really love that you said that. And I think I've reflected on the people that are closest to me now. I'm going to say are probably 75 to 85% entrepreneurs in one way or another, or business owners who do understand that. They understand that there are those times. They understand that. And also they understand that like our business, again, what I said, like I can't really separate like who I am and from what I do. And so that comes into our conversation. And I think what's cool, the JV I'm launching is with a good friend, right? It came up. We had our business meeting to map out the business in a sauna.
Some of my best conversations happen in the sauna.
It was amazing. But I think there is an element, if you are going to go down, frankly, to what we said before, any path that is outside kind of a normal, where what you spend majority of your time either earning, you know, money or fame is separate from like what lights you up. Like I think you kind of need other people around you who get that to a degree, because I think that's like pretty critical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. And I think the flip side of that is it's also good to have people that are not in that space as well, because then they're going to think differently than you are and give a different perspective. And I think having a balance of perspectives is really important.
Yeah, they
and
even
not, and because like if you're just talking to other entrepreneurs or those that are creative or doing something, you're just talking into an echo chamber. And so you're not seeing the reality of the rest of life. And I think that's the problem. You know, as a species, we tend to want to surround ourselves with those that are just like us. And the danger of that is that we think that everything is the same. Our viewpoint is the same, whether that's politically or relationally or whatever. I mean, and that's what like Facebook and all the algorithms they feed on. They want to feed us the exact same information, and it basically just becomes an echo chamber. And I think that's dangerous. And because realizing that most of the world is not like that, and that's where travel comes into play. You're seeing new cultures and the way people live and what they believe and what they do and how they eat and the architecture that they use. And so that's why I'm such a big proponent of traveling as much as possible and seeing all those things, because it opens your eyes to a whole new world and realize how big and amazing it actually is. And we're a lot more alike than we think, outside of just those little things that maybe is some of just the day-to-day stuff that we're doing.
Yeah, Seth, you're speaking my language. I love that. I feel like you've read my mind so many times in this conversation.
Simpatico.
I love it. I'm such a proponent of travel. I think it comes back to what we talked about also about perspective, right? Like travel's a cheat code for me. It lights me up. It energizes me. I have the best ideas when I'm, on the move. And I fundamentally think that it is a huge part of who I am today, where I am, my success is I think it's really easy, to your point about echo chambers. I think there is a stereotype that as you get older, you get more stuck in your ways. And I think there are elements of that are somewhat related to, physiology, psychology, whatever.
Sure.
But I actually think I've become more open-minded. I love to have a conversation. I won't lie, there are certain things I'm not super flexible to like discuss when it comes to like human rights and stuff like that. Sure. But overall, I'm like encouraging people. I'm like, if I say something that you think is bullshit, like call me, tell me. I want to hear it. have changed my mind on all kinds of things. And I think that's the love of learning and getting comfortable with like yourself and not needing to be right. And like, I'm a pretty Virgo. I like to be right. I see a lot of things. I have a lot of thoughts. I've learned that I don't need to share them all the time. People don't need to take the advice, or they don't even need to receive it sometimes. But I think travel, and it is a place that I've actually gained, I'm going to say compassion for people as well. Like if I have a conversation with someone or something, where I'm like feeling like, oh my God, like they seem so narrow-minded, whatever. And I realize that they haven't had maybe the benefit. Like the life I've built is privileged, right? And it came from some privilege. I built a lot of it myself, but I have seen and done things that so many people will never. And I really try to live in gratitude for that. But I also have to remember that everyone's led a different path and had different experiences that shape the way they see the world. And it may just be different experiences, it may be less experiences, whatever that is. But I think it has helped me, one, be more open-minded, but also be more compassionate, that like people can only process what comes in, right? You can only filter what actually comes in your funnel. And being combative is like not the path to anything positive.
There's a concept of roots versus wings, where when you want to set roots down and really build like community and others, you need to be static, or you need to be like in the same location and put your roots down deep and like building community and being involved in all those things, as opposed to wings where you're traveling and free and all those. And there's pros and cons to both. And so where I'm constantly curious, and like I'm the type of person, I love traveling so much. If I'm not on an airplane once or twice a month, I start getting anxious. Like I need to go do something or whatever. But is that because like I don't feel like a sense of community or home where I'm at? And no place has ever truly felt like home to me. And I don't know if that's just how I was raised, where I was raised, et cetera. But I think I've always constantly been searching for that place that feels like it really is like home, or where I can really have roots and settle down, and it feels like this is the place that I want to be. So is there an element of avoidance of not putting the time and the effort into making this current place, or this where I'm at, like the home base, or like building those roots? Or is it just wired differently, just to want to have the wings and constantly learn and explore and all of that? So I'm curious your take on it.
Oh gosh. I mean, we're about to go deep.
Yes, please.
So I actually think you might be the first person who's ever said no place has ever felt like home to me, because that's been my life experience. And there was something about Mexico that after 4 years on the road, coming here for a month, thinking, oh, maybe I'll stay through the winter, there was an intuition. There was something about it that felt like home. And now home has always kind of been people, it's kind of always been inside me, but I've been on the move since I was, 15. And the funny thing is, the first go around of Mexico home was absolute chaos and terrible, and set me back, and that's a whole other podcast. And I have now built community and really have some roots. And then in the last 6 months, I've been starting to think about what's important to me and maybe splitting my time. And I also am on a plane probably every month now. A lot of it's for work, but I know that it's a cheat code for me. I know it lights me up. I know it inspires me. I know I have a lot of my best thoughts, that I get energized, that also just, cheat code, it creates deadlines. Like, there's a practical component, but I've really thought about this a lot. I talk about high performance and culture and getting the best out of yourself and others. So of course this is something I think about, but it's interesting when you said wings and roots, I was like, oh, I think when I was nomadic, I had some limiting beliefs that I could either be wherever I wanted to be and be on the move, or I could have a home base. And I think that was probably, I don't know if it was the last chapter of money beliefs. I'm sure there's probably more, but I really had to deal with a lot when I started earning. It's I really martyred myself in the first years of consulting, and try not to take us too far off, but I had never had enough money, let alone more than I needed.
Sure.
And so I was like, well, I just got to work all the time. Like they're paying me all of this. Oh my God. I just got to work. I was also
stack it up.
Yeah. Like I graduated high school young, did a 4-year degree in 3 years, hit the market, did some stuff, went back and did an MBA as the youngest person. I was terrified I didn't even find out my age, graduated, and went into essentially a 6-figure job and was like, okay. So anyways, but I think when I was nomadic, I had this belief, and then I finally kind of put roots down here. And as I said, it was a bit of a trial and error, but I did come to this moment where I was like, well, you could have multiple homes where you bounce between them and communities, or you could have one and then travel wherever you want. And maybe you rent your homes out when you're not there. Maybe you don't, like, depends on what's important, financials, like, and I just kind of realized, like, I've always known this in certain ways, but I think we always have certain parts of us that are maybe anchored in old beliefs or traditional thought of like, you can do whatever you want and you get to define it. And so I have an amazing community here that I'm so grateful for, because I really have a good global community, and I've figured out how to stay in touch with people that are meaningful to me. And that is part of what started me thinking about I have a goddaughter that's on another continent, and like, what would it look like to be in that vicinity for a few weeks at a time or months of the year? I really love the energy of Mexico City. I don't want to live in big city metropolis full time, 100%. I made that decision a few years ago, understanding my own intensity, and I love communal cultures and smaller places. Those really work for me. They pull me out of my isolation gremlin vibes. And I don't know if I'm giving you my perspective on any answer to the question, but I guess where I've landed for now is I think I can have multiple homes, which for someone who has never felt like they had any home is quite a revelation.
Yeah.
Both physical, which now I really have created a space that's like my safe, happy place, which is quite unique and for me, very powerful, was very important in the last year and a half. But also the community. Like, I think the community and the, chosen family and the, various kind of levels that community plays for us. I do think that maybe it's like blueprint is potentially to have 2 or 3 of those. And I think it relates a little bit to the idea also of like this concept of like work your whole life so you can retire and move to, I don't know, Florida, wherever, Mexico, and then start this like dream life with in a new community at like 60 something, 70 years old. Like, I don't get that. That does not make sense.
It's like that whole parable of the Mexican fisherman, right?
Yes. And even more so for how we live and work, right? Like, live your life one way, build all these connections and community, and then like uproot yourself in your we don't all have to get rigid, but like rigid old age. Yeah. And then start fresh. Like, that's weird. So for me, I'm kind of like really thinking about, well, what are the different facets of me and what fills each one and amplifies it in a good way? And how do I curate that into an ecosystem of homes?
Sure. Do you know what your astrocartography is?
A little bit.
Okay. Curious what that says about it.
In terms of like, what's my sun and moon and rising?
No, not your astrology, your astrocartography.
Oh, my astrocartography.
Yeah.
Okay. I do not. I have forayed in. I have a lot of people in my life who are very well versed in these things, in astrology, who have astrocartography coaches and they have literally lived their lives based on this friend who just got married. She waited to move based on, I want to build my business, and when I go to this place, it's going to be this. And I moved, met someone, got married within 6 months. Like, I was like, all right, girl, like, love that for you. Okay. So yeah, I have people in my life who are very into that, human design as well. Yep. I would say probably less of a sporadic enthusiast than surfing, but similar, where I'm like, ooh, I'll be super interested, I'll learn, but it's not a day-to-day, but now
Yeah,
I'm
I'd be curious what your astrocartography says as far as like in relation to home and place and things like that.
Yeah,
Could be
so
interesting. Yeah.
So, we're talking about peers, we're talking about community, and you have been exposed to so many founders and entrepreneurs and successful leaders. I'm always looking to have a little bit of a tangible takeaway for people, and I'm wondering, what do you think it takes to be a truly incredible builder? Or maybe more specifically, are there common traits or amongst brand builders in particular?
The word that's coming to mind is tenacity.
Okay.
I think in order to really build something or to have some type of success, you have to be tenacious in what you're willing to do. There's going to be some trade-offs. You're going to have to make some sacrifices. And you have to not take no for an answer. You have to have that vision. You have to consistently do the right things in order to make it happen and accomplish your goals and what you're trying to do. So I really think being tenacious and just not accepting the status quo and just going after your goals and objectives in order to accomplish them.
Amazing. And maybe this is an easy answer because it's just the inverse, but do you think that there is a place where most people go wrong, or like the biggest roadblock that typically stops people from achieving their objectives?
I feel like I could give a couple answers here, and I'm not sure what the right one actually is, but I think there's often a lack of belief in oneself. Or maybe it's imposter syndrome, maybe it's feeling like you don't have enough information, or you're not good enough, or don't deserve it. So maybe it's fear of failure, but it might also be fear of success. Because I think there's always some wiring that we have coming from early childhood that bleeds into this in all areas of life. And so I don't think there's a one answer because everyone's so different. We're all wired differently. The way we were raised is different, culturally and backgrounds and everything. So I think often it's probably either fear of success or fear of failure, and just depending on those things. And so it's just a lack of belief in oneself. If it's fear of success, it's you don't believe that you'll be able to handle that success, or you might think that that's bad, or something bad's going to happen, or like you don't deserve to make the money. Or fear of failure is like, okay, well, what will my friends say or my family say if I try this and I fail? And so it's better not to try than to try and fail. And that kind of goes back to that question of, when it comes to setting goals, is it better to set your goals for the stars, and even if you fail, you hit the moon, which will feel like a failure because you didn't accomplish the goal, or you just set it at the moon and you accomplish it, but realizing you probably could have gotten more if you would have set it higher? It's a trade-off. And I don't know what the answer is to that. I think it probably is going to depend on the person, and if you need to hit those goals in order to elevate from there, or if you're the person you just set such lofty goals all the time that you may not hit it, but you're going to accomplish more by setting it higher.
But I think that comes to North Star, and then like how you approach like delivering on it. Because with my clients, I'm like, let's get honest. If you don't say it, the odds of us achieving it, pretty but if you say it and we get this far, right? Like I'm like, if you say you want to build like a 9-figure company and we come up at like 95 million, are you gonna like cry in your Bugatti? Like probably not. Right? Like but also and I'm a huge believer, again back to my like neuroscience nerdiness, breaking things down so that you can measure each part of the achievement and clock it and take time to celebrate your win, which sounds so lame and cheesy, but it files the evidence in your brain that you could do hard things, and it creates momentum. And as entrepreneurs, we're always off to the next problem. We are problem solvers. If we don't have a problem to solve, we'll create one. And
that
right? Like, but your brain filing that evidence, and that is partly you taking the time to actually break down those audacious big goals into measurable milestones, deliverables, is so important. And then actually taking a moment, and it can be as easy as like shoot a text, as a breath, as whatever it is, but your brain doesn't need a lot of time. It operates very fast without your awareness.
Yeah.
But taking that, filing that, it actually is scientifically proven to be a precursor for success. And so I do think it matters who you are and how you operate, but I also think how, to your point, how you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. If you can identify each of those bites and then do it, you can achieve almost anything. And I think you can, to a degree, circumvent the unnecessary failure, perceptions of failure that are not true, right? Like, if you try to do it all and you don't break it down, if you're just like, I want this big thing and I don't know where to start, and then you do nothing, like, you feel like you failed. Sure. If you're like, I want to do this crazy thing, and then you work super hard and in a year you get 60% of the way there, and then you feel like you failed. Yeah, but like, when did you want to do the big thing, and in what steps? Like, if this is your life's aspiration, it's not going to happen in a year or 10.
Yeah. And also getting clear on your why. Knowing why you want to do those things. I mean, without the why, I mean, doesn't really matter.
Yeah. And that's where, I think I said, I say, get really honest with yourself, get honest with me. What is, you got to say it out loud. But then I'm like, great, like, why? And be honest about the why. There's no wrong answer, right? Like, none of my clients are coming in and like, well, my why is because I'm going to, like, destroy the world. Like, no, like, get honest, get clear, because that is then going to really, really shape like how we approach it and what matters, because you can also achieve your goal and then it feels terrible. Or what it cost you to we talked about trade-offs. What it cost you isn't something you intended to spend.
Yeah. I think as entrepreneurs, as business owners, often we are not willing to answer the why because it comes from a place of hurt or trauma. And so we're trying to recreate something or to prove that we are valuable or that we are enough or that we have value or meaning to our parents, to our friends, to our community, to whoever, to a significant other, whatever, and to prove that. And so there's an element of ego in there. I think narcissism is the most overused term over the past couple of years, and so I don't want to say that, but there could be an element, a little bit of narcissism within that, which I think we all need some of that just to an extent to have a healthy ego. But I think it really depends on the reason why behind that, and often we're not willing to identify that because then it feels selfish or wrong, as opposed to, no, I want to do this because then I'm showing that I have worth, or because then I did more than my friend and so I'm proving myself or something. And that's okay. Just be honest about it. But then once you're able to actually be honest and admit that, it's like, okay, but then do I really need this? Does that really matter in the long run? Probably not, as long as you have your bills covered and you're living a good life, doing the things that you want to do. So what are the real things? What's the why behind the why?
Also, what's under that? Like, oh, I want to do this. Why? Oh, well, because I want to be able to take care of these people in a way that, my parents couldn't. You're like, oh, yeah. So it's not actually about beating whatever.
Yeah.
It's that. And maybe it's a bit of self-worth. Maybe it's proving. But often, and I know I'm biased because, the type of person who wants to work with me, especially someone who like sees them and asks hard questions, like, is a certain type of person. So like if I were to look at sample size of my clients and those conversations in that first workshop, of course they're not reflective of the whole world and the spectrum of personalities within leaders and entrepreneurs. But when we dig down, and this is why I do it, is I'm like, why are you building this company? What do you want the company to achieve? What do you want your life to look like? What is your driver? And get real about it. And because it's so fundamentally important, but also the things that come out of that are sometimes, like, there's a reason those workshops are sometimes longer than others, right? Like, sometimes there's stuff to unpack, but that foundation and then that North Star, I always say North Star is a little bit like a marathon. Like, you got to be careful. You want the North Star, but then you need to, again, like, look at the steps, because if you have a blinders on of whatever, many millions, and you run straight past a $2 million opportunity, like, you miss the turn.
Sure.
Right? Like, but you also can, those micro adjustments, if you don't keep your eye on the prize, you can end up miles off course. Very true. So there's this like give and take along the way, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Very true.
I want to ask you one more question, and then we have a quick kind of like way we like to end it that's a little bit fun.
Great.
But we haven't talked about your companies all that much. We talked about some of the earlier stage ones, but I always want to ask people what's next, and I do want to ask you what's next, but I also want to talk about Rewild gear really quickly, because I know that that's something you're incredibly passionate about, and we haven't had a chance to chat about it.
Sure. Yeah, Rewild gear is my fun little side project that I started with my brothers a few years ago, really to scratch my own itch. I've been, I love the outdoors, camping, hunting, backpacking. Anything in nature is just like my happy place. And so I've always just loved spending time in the wilderness. And so me and my brother several years ago, we decided that we wanted to create a company to around that. And so it started, we were camping and we're comparing knives and started throwing out the idea, like, if you were going to create the perfect knife, what would it look like? What would the shape be, the ergonomics of it, the materials, all of that? We're drinking bourbon and just, comparing like 25 different knives or whatever around the campfire. So yeah. So, someday we'll do that. And then COVID happened, and I had this realization that the one thing people could do with all the lockdowns was still get in nature and go out and do stuff. Like, well, now's as good a time as any, so why not start another company, So we did, and it's been a very challenging business because since we do sell knives, that's our flagship product, Meta, they consider that a weapon, and so we're not able to advertise it, even though a knife is the first tool that enabled us to create every other tool that we have. And so this is one of those things where when you're starting a company, starting a business, having an audience is really important. Because if not, customer acquisition is the hardest part of most business. So if you have an audience, like I did with the other company in the health and wellness space, where I launched Wellness, had that, so built-in audience that could sell products to, they were demanding it, could sell it, as opposed to Rewild gear, where having to build an audience from scratch. And so that's been, it's been very challenging. And so that's my fun side project that is not getting nearly enough attention as it needs to. But we make really high quality and minimalistic gear for camping, hunting, and backpacking. And so we have a conservation ethic as well, where we do donate some of our profit to different conservation organizations that are doing to as much as they can to protect our wild spaces and our wild places, because with urban sprawl and everything, we're losing a lot of those. We've lost so much of our flora and fauna over the years, just from all these, whether that's pollution or over farming, monocropping, things like that. So it's definitely a passion of mine.
I can hear the passion in your voice when you talk about it, and so cool that you're doing that with your brothers. Yeah. I love the angle, obviously, of conservation personally, and my dad is retired and living out his dreams of being a conservation lawyer.
Nice. Oh, cool.
Yeah, head of Sierra Club Canada.
Amazing.
He's at every rally on Parliament Hill. That's like
Sweet.
All the texts are him, and I'm like, oh God, I love it. He's out there. He's like, this is what I always wanted to do with my life, and I didn't get to do it.
Oh, it's so cool. I'm a big hunter. I just love being in nature and watching it wake up, and then having the opportunity to harvest my food. And so I have this dream of one year that all of the meat, all the food that I consume is something that I've been able to procure myself, whether that's hunting, deer or other animals, or growing vegetables or fishing or whatever. We'll see if I ever actually accomplish that, because that's a lot of work. But I think it's something, as far as sustainability goes, and having the healthiest, freshest, most organic food possible, it would be the way to do it.
I'm seeing you in a community of preppers.
I went down the prep path probably 15, 20 years ago, but yeah.
All right. So what is next? What's the best way for people to get in touch with you? And then I'll ask you our...
Sure, yeah. My personal website, SethSpears.com, that's kind of like home base. Everything kind of goes from there. Instagram is another good spot, at Spears Marketing. And all my socials and everything are linked from my personal website.
Incredible. We will make sure to have it all there. We will make sure Rewild is there. If you're listening, go give it some love.
Sure.
Gift your favorite outdoors person something for the next holiday, birthday. I think I had a quick look, and it's a gorgeous website. You have a cool podcast tied to it, so
yeah,
definitely
that's been fun.
Let's get the news out there. I think it's really cool. And, as you said, with whatever limitations, community is the way.
Totally, for sure.
All right, so I have 5 rapid fire questions for you.
Great.
These are just for fun. You can answer in a word, in a sentence, whatever feels good, you can pass.
Okay.
You ready?
Let's go.
Awesome. What's one decision that changed everything for you as a leader?
Ooh. Hiring a CEO for Wellness and taking a step back and realizing that what got us here won't get us there. And in order to do that, letting someone else see how they could shine, and letting a little bit more of my ego kind of die too, because it doesn't all rely on me. And that growth sometimes happens by letting go and not doing more, but sometimes doing less and letting others take ownership and moving forward.
I have to resist the urge to go in on that. I love it. We're in it. We're in the rapid fire. What does strategy feel like when you're doing it well?
Whoa. I don't know. I've never, what does strategy feel like when I'm doing it well? I think it's almost, maybe it's like a flow state. It's kind of like when I think by writing things out. Like I have a big whiteboard over here, and when I'm like in just mental like regurgitation mode, where I just throw things out and I just like start planning or making notes or wireframing or mind mapping or things like that. And I think it just feels like it's just going. It's just like boom, 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 and things are just flowing. And then you kind of lay out the plan. These are the steps that we're going to take. This is what we're going to do. And then just taking it and running with it. So yeah, I think it's just kind of, it's like a natural, it feels effortless.
Oh, I like it. All right. Is there a book, a podcast, or a person that really like cracked something open for you?
Yeah, there's been so many over the years. I think there's a time and a place for everything, that the information that we've taken in at different times of life. When I was in high school, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That totally changed my outlook on business and like what it meant to make money in financials. Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. That changed my life as far as networking and meeting others and how can I provide value and what am I bringing to the table in all areas of life. The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss got me thinking as far as like digital nomadism, travel, and not just you have to be in one location or things like that when it comes to business. The other one, this is not business related, is what's the name of it? It's sitting on my bookshelf. It is, why is the name escaping me? It Didn't Start With You by Mark Wolin. And that is a book about intergenerational trauma and how it gets passed down epigenetically. And when I went through divorce and did a deep dive in all things therapy and trauma related and relationships and everything, it played a drastic impact on me in unpacking those layers of myself and realizing that some of those patterns and habits that I was doing, they were not mine. They had been passed down from my own family of origin and everything. And so how to change that and reverse those. So I'd say that's another one that's had a big impact on me.
Amazing. What's something you've said never again to in your business?
In business? Something that I said never. Getting overly competitive. There was a time back in the day where there was like a big affiliate competition and we're trying to win it. And I got overly competitive in order to win and just send out way too many emails, and it created a lot of backlash. And there's a whole lot more that goes into it, but realizing that let's do things for the right reason and not just to win. Because at the end of the day, that doesn't matter. Let's do what's right for our audience and not for someone else. Yeah, so I'd say that's it. And I'll also add something onto that as well, is always listen to your intuition, because there was a business partnership that I was going into at one time and something felt a little bit off, but it kind of pushed through. And by so doing, it destroyed a friendship, cost $250,000 and just nothing to show for it. And the outcome was nothing but negative. And so the never again will I go against my intuition when something seems off.
Yeah.
I'm going to listen to that and not just the numbers. Yep.
Yeah. And the last one is, if you had a free weekend, 0 obligations, how would you spend it?
I'm going to travel. I'm going to go somewhere, probably either somewhere where I've never been, where I want to explore, see something new, or maybe a place that I've been before. And my family's from Cincinnati originally, and so I'm a big Bengals and Reds fan. So if there's a game, I'm going to go up there and go to a game. I would say I'd go to Sicily as well because I'm Sicilian, but you need more time than just a weekend. So
We'll give you a long weekend.
Exactly. There you go.
Seth, thank you so much for your generosity with your time and your insights. It's been an absolute pleasure. We're going to have to get you down here and do it live recording.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get Caleb in and we'll all
Boom.
jam on things.
Hell yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. This has been so much fun, Alex.
Amazing.
That's a wrap for this episode of Builders, where we get real about what it actually takes to grow companies that perform without grinding you into the ground. If today's convo sparks something for you, here's what to do next. Follow the show, drop a 5-star review, and share it with someone else who's building big. Don't let it be lonely at the top. If you're ready for more clarity, more leadership freedom, and less of a duct tape and go growth vibe, let's connect. Book your free business breakdown call using the link in the show notes. In 30 minutes, I'll help you pinpoint where blockers in your time, team, or strategy are silently stalling your growth. Walk away with a personalized fix-it list that gives you the clarity you've been craving on what to shift now to regain traction and build momentum. For more tools, insights, and my no-fluff takes on leadership and scaling strategically, join the Builders Club, also linked in the show notes. You can also head over to leaderswhobuild.com, where you'll find all the links to Pete My Creds, see client wins, or just confirm that yes, I went to the gym today. Until next time, keep leading boldly, building smart, and living success on your terms.